IPVanish protects every device you own. Your phone, your laptop, your smart TV. If it connects to the internet, it should be protected. IPVanish encrypts your connection and masks your IP address, helping keep your browsing private at home and on public Wi-Fi. And with no device limits, one account covers everything. Stream with added privacy. Browse securely. Connect with confidence. Right now, save 83% off the 2-year plan. Get started today at ipvanish.com/audio and take control of your privacy with IPVanish.
This is the Elder Scrolls Lorecast, your source for lore and so much more. Yo, 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 welcome back to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast. You got me, Tom, and Lotus. That was a joke from the pre-show where I said yo, and I was like, does anybody say yo anymore? And so I started it with yo, and now I've explained the joke, and it's no longer funny. Welcome back.
Actually, I feel it makes it funnier by explaining it. Also, I had no idea that was how I should actually start the show.
It just happened. I told you, I've been changing my sleep schedule, and I'm just like, I might be just a little bit weird today because I'm lacking sleep, and it's weird. But hey, Lotus and I are back, and we are delving into a new series of episodes, The Elder Scrolls Iceberg. And for those of you who don't know what The Elder Scrolls Iceberg is, this is a thing that's been going around the internet for like the last decade. Basically, there are a whole bunch of lore topics, right? The Elder Scrolls lore goes super deep. And at the very top of the iceberg are the things that a lot of people know about. And we're going to start there. And we're going to go through topic by topic until we get to the deepest, darkest pieces of lore. And some of these things are super esoteric. Some of them have only a little shred of evidence, but some of them are super deep concepts that have a lot of evidence. Just people don't know about them very much. Is that a good explanation, Lotus?
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Just because, like, again, it's going to start much more, I want to say, logical, and kind of most people will have a grasp of what we're talking about, and then it's just going to get really weird as we go farther and farther down.
Our favorite thing.
Yeah, as we were talking about, like in the pre-show, everybody can kind of see the tip of an iceberg, the part that's above water. But as you go farther beneath the surface, it's more and more obscured, and that's where we kind of get into the like lore topics that are just like off the wall, zany, possibly completely incoherent at certain points.
Yeah.
So some of the ones that I read through, I was like, all right, sure.
And there are things people talk about, and some have more proof and some have less. You've probably seen these floating around. You may have even seen people do videos about the Elder Scrolls Iceberg in particular, but there's one for like every fandom of everything with any sort of lore at all.
It became, I don't know when the iceberg thing became a thing, but everything has its own iceberg if it's got enough like story crafting behind it.
Right. And a lot of those you'll see like this iceberg taken on like an hour or 2 hour long video. But oftentimes they'll just kind of give you a very brief, like 1 or 2 sentence explanation when they cover these things. But we're going to go deeper into some of these things. And some of these things are things that we've covered before. And so we'll point back to the episodes and be like, well, we covered that one in a previous episode. Here's a brief explanation again. If you
right. Because we're not just going to retread the exact same steps. I mean, there's going to be plenty of these that we have not covered, but some of these, like you said, we're just kind of make mention of. We can do a quick explanation, but you can check out the episodes that we fully cover them in, because it's like, well, how many years have we been doing this? We've covered a lot of topics.
6 years now. Yeah.
We've covered a lot of topics over this many years.
Would be 6 years of this show, and you've been a part of it for like 5 of those. So
yeah, I was going to say I joined shortly after it started. So.
Yeah. There's a really big long one. I don't have a link available right now. Barky's asking if we have a specific one, but I'll share that in the description underneath it when I post the episode and all that.
Yep.
But here, let's get into it. And this very first one is a good example of the very top of the iceberg being something that people, I'm going to say it and people will be like, well, yeah.
Right, right? Skyrim 2, right?
Wait, Skyrim 2. Yeah, if you played Skyrim, then you know this one. The very first top of the iceberg, number 1, is companions are werewolves. That's just, yes. If you've played Skyrim and you've done the companion quest line, then cool. You know that the companions are werewolves. This isn't super deep lore. The depth of this really is a little bit more along the lines of they're actually Hercene worshippers, which is tied to the whole werewolf thing. And they seem like cool, nice people, but also they worship a Daedric prince. So,
right. But as we've gone through with the whole series is very rarely do you have things as cut and dry as good and evil in the series.
Right.
So like
Right.
being a Daedric prince, follower or worshiper doesn't even necessarily mean you also can't be a like acceptable person.
Right.
I don't even want to say good, but like an acceptable person. So like they're not mutually exclusive by any means.
Right. Right. And one of the big things about Skyrim and the inclusion of the companions here is that it basically replaced the Fighters Guild from previous games. So they're similar to the Fighters Guild, but they've got kind of their own thing going on. And they're also werewolves. So not a whole lot to go on about that. Everybody knows they're werewolves if you've played the game. The game's been out forever. So there you go. Let's move on to the second one. Lotus, the second one is the Dragon War. And we did some episodes about this. And what I find interesting about this specific topic is that there is a book in the lore specifically about the Dragon War. And the brief description here is a war in the Merithic era in which the ancient Nords rebelled against their dragon and dragon priest masters. And again, if you've played through Skyrim and you've had to deal with dragon priests and any of that stuff, and you paid any attention to any of the conversations and lore and things going on, then you probably put this one together. Make sense?
Yeah. I mean, this is one of those things where it's like by playing in the mainline series, the most popular game in the series as well, you kind of get your confirmation of this or things that did happen, where it just seems more logical that since you're fighting what seems like the lower ranking human minions of the dragons, it would lead credence to the fact that the Dragon War, including the books, existed and it's a thing.
Right. So we're going to delve a little bit deeper in this one because the book is actually very interesting and it's only about 7 paragraphs long. So, and like I said, we may only get through like 4 or 5 on this episode, but we're going to continue the series moving forward. But here, let's get into it. The Dragon War. The in-game author is Torhall Bjork. And this is how it goes. And Lotus, feel free after each paragraph to kind of point out things and I'll chime in too.
Sure.
It says, in the Merithic era, when Ysgramor first set foot on Tamriel, his people brought with them a faith that worshipped animal gods. Certain scholars believed these primitive people actually worshipped the divines as we know them, just in the form of these totem animals. They deified I almost said defied, but deified the hawk, wolf.
The opposite.
Yeah, the opposite. The hawk, wolf, snake, moth, owl, whale, bear, fox, and dragon. Every now and then you can stumble across the broken stone totems in the further reaches of Skyrim. And this is why when you go into Bleak Falls Barrow and there are those totems, the stone totems, some of them have like a whale on them or an owl.
And most of the locking puzzles tend to relate to these deified animals.
Right. And the relationship there is between these animals and representation of the Aedra. So the story goes on. Foremost among all animals was the dragon. In the ancient Nordic tongue, it was dragon. So it's DRAH-GKON. Occasionally, the term Dovra is used, but the language or derivation of that is not known. Using either name was forbidden to all except the dragon priests. Grand temples were built to honor the dragons and appease them. Many of them survive today as ancient ruins haunted by Draugr and undead dragon priests, which is like, half Skyrim's map, right?
The majority of your delving is that.
Right.
And fighting these people.
Right. So dragons, being dragons, embraced their role as god kings over men. After all, were they not fashioned in Akatosh's own image? Were they not superior in every way to the hordes of small, soft creatures that worshipped them? For dragons, power equals truth. They had the power, so therefore it must be truth. Dragons granted small amounts of power to the dragon priests in exchange for absolute obedience. In turn, the dragon priests ruled men as equals to the kings. Dragons, of course, could not be bothered with actually ruling, so they just enjoyed the power and the domination.
Yeah.
And
they don't actually care about anything other than being like saying they're important. So all the trivial things like making any of it work, they're just like, sure, look at the great position you have. There you go. Now do all the actual work.
Yeah, look at all our slaves. You guys take care of it all. It's fine, right?
Yep. It'll all work out.
It'll all work. So in Atmora, if you're new to any of this lore, maybe you're just tuning in for the first time, Atmora was the continent north of Tamriel, where the Nords originally came from. In Atmora, where Ysgramor and his people came from, hey, it said it right there, the dragon priests demanded tribute and set down laws and codes for living that kept peace between dragons and men. In Tamriel, they were not nearly as benevolent. It's unclear if this was due to an ambitious dragon priest or a particular dragon or a series of weak kings. Whatever the cause, the dragon priests began to rule with an iron fist, making virtual slaves of the rest of the population. So it seems like this was something that was like part of the culture and a prized part of the culture and worked pretty well in Atmora, but then in Tamriel, not so much.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't really, that one doesn't really have a lot more to say to it.
Sure. When the populace rebelled, dragon priests retaliated. When the dragon priests could not collect the tribute or control the masses, the dragon's response was swift and brutal. So it was the dragon war began. At first, men died by the thousands. The ancient texts reveal that a few dragons took the side of men. Why they did this is not known. The priests of the Nine Divines claim it was Akatosh himself that intervened. From these dragons, men learned magics to use against dragons. The tide began to turn and dragons began to die too. So the Nords become more powerful and they start learning to use their shouts against them is kind of what happens here.
Right, which does kind of attribute to some of the scenes of the past you see in Skyrim kind of leads to this. And since you're theoretically playing through that, that would make it seem like that's pretty likely.
Right. So it ends with, the war was long and bloody. The dragon priests were overthrown and dragons were slaughtered in large numbers. The surviving dragons scattered, choosing to live in remote places away from men. The dragon cult itself adapted and survived. They built the dragon mounds, entombed the remains of dragons that fell in the war. They believed that one day the dragons would rise again and reward the faithful. And this is why you find those tombs with the Draugr who are still tending them to this day when you go visit. And it's also why there are so many remains of dragons that can be resurrected. And you'll actually see, what's his face? Akatosh. Akatosh flying around the map, like resurrecting dragons from these individual tombs.
Alduin. No,
Alduin, I'm sorry, not Akatosh.
Yeah. Too many A's.
Too many A's.
It was like, what?
If you've listened to the show before, you know that I mix up words when they start with the same letters.
But that's exactly it. When Alduin's shouting at the mounds of dirt and dragons are popping out of them, that's what he's doing. Yep.
So, and that's why they're all over the place. So this all relates back to that. And again, it's not a super deep topic. This is something, if you played the games and paid any attention, you might have noticed pieces of this, but that one book basically puts it all together. So there you go. The Dragon War. On to number 3. Talos, fake god. So this concept is that Tiber Septim, or Talos, and we did a big whole thing about this.
This one we're going to do a quick synopsis.
This is a quick synopsis.
This has come up so many times outside just even our full episode on it.
Right. So Talos is said to have ascended to godhood at the beginning of the Third Era, then being in Ad Ada as the original divines rather than being in Ad Ada. So like the original divines were at Ada. They were these powerful beings that have always, I'm putting this in quotes, from the beginning of the Kelpa, been these powerful beings. They may not have been powerful beings before that. There may have been things that change and that gets all fuzzy. But for the most part, powerful beings were powerful beings at the beginning of this time loop or Kalpa. And Talos wasn't. Talos was a man. And although he's described as the most important hero god of mankind, his godhood almost undisputed in the Third Era of the Empire. The Thalmor in the Fourth Era deny this. And this is why they are so like poised on this idea that they need to bring down the empire of man, and they basically convinced the empire to make it so that people didn't worship Talos anymore. And that became a whole thing. I know that was a little bit like around like indirect, but
yeah, no, I mean, but that's not wrong. And I mean, I guess that's the quickest explanation we can give without going super deep into this for the 40th time.
Yeah, everything touches on other stuff. And that's part of the problem with boiling these down too much, is that it's just like the model of the atom. If you give somebody like the 6th grade model of the atom, it's not anywhere close to what an atom actually looks like or how it works. Right. But it's a simplified version so you can understand it.
Yeah, and I was going to say, if you're super interested in that one, you can definitely check out our full episode on that / the many other times it gets brought up for various other connecting topics.
Right, right. And this plays into the idea that, like, people can mantle gods. They can actually take the place of gods that exist, or they can become powerful enough to become a god in their own right. And that this has happened a few different times in the lore that we're aware of. And sometimes they don't stay there, but sometimes they do. And there's a whole thing about the, worshiping a god, and does the god still exist if it isn't worshipped, and all that kind of thing. But
right,
according to mankind, the Empire, the Nords, most of Tamriel at this point is like, okay, Talos is a god, but the Thalmor, who are part of a very specific group of the High Elves, are like, nope, we don't believe he's a god.
Absolutely not. You weren't there at the start. You don't count.
Right, right. And that ties back to their belief that they descended from the gods and that they are going to return to where
Correct.
they came from and all of that, which will probably play into the plot of Elder Scrolls 6 when it comes out.
Possibly.
So, all right, next one on the list, the Markarth incident. This is an incident where Ulfric Stormcloak demanded Talos worship be permitted in Markarth after retaking it for the Empire. Ulfric reportedly committed multiple atrocities in the city, putting even children to the sword. This would lead to his arrest by the Imperials under fear of Thalmor retaliation. So what do you think about this one, Lotus?
This one is kind of interesting because there's a lot of stuff that you can glean being potentially true, and especially where people are in Skyrim, and what you get out of information related to the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, not the the province too, but that this seems like okay, this could be like an interesting situation, because again, we've gone over the fact that it's like the events of Skyrim and their civil war are pretty screwed up on both sides. So having something like this be in a pretty messed up situation on the other side, it's like, yep, I could. This seems pretty high likelihood, as far as I'm concerned, to just be a background to this, and it kind of might explain why some people are in the positions they are, or have the feelings they do when you're playing through the Elder Scrolls V itself.
Yeah, one of the things that they did pretty well with Skyrim is show that not everybody is, in fact, almost nobody is just kind of clean white, beacon of, knight in shining armor and all of that.
And unfortunately, more often than not, people have to use the ends justify the means, because rarely are wars done with a set of rules that everybody obeys. Something always spirals out of control. There's no nice way to kill people that disagree with you. So well it always gets kind of dicey. So the fact that this seems like a potential thing, and you already know that there's so many of these conflicts that have broken out in the area, it really does not even seem out of character potentially.
Yeah. And this one has a book reference that solidifies a very specific point of view on this, and we're going to read through that. This is The Bear of Markarth, The Crimes of Ulfric Stormcloak. So for those of you who are Stormcloaks and you're like, no, for the Nords.
That's right.
Here you go. Here's
Wind
another
your fist
perspective.
Back and get ready to punch that, I don't know, dashboard. I assume you're listening while driving. But keep your hands on your wheel, actually.
Yeah, keep driving. This is by Arius, Imperial Scholar. Words are hard. Ulfric Stormcloak is Tuniace. Ulfric Stormcloak is considered a hero by many for his part in quelling the Forsworn rebellion or uprising. It is said that when the Empire abandoned Skyrim and the natives of the Reach rebelled, undoubtedly due to the Nords' poor treatment of them, you can see the slant. This is already pushing here.
Out the gate. There's always a slant.
Always an angle to something, right? It's always framed a certain way. Ulfric Stormcloak and his militia were there to retake, quote, their land from the Forsworn. In all their bravado and epic yarns the Scalds compose of his exploits, you would think Ulfric to be a giant of a man, equal to that of Tiber Septim in his cunning, leadership, and decisive actions. But the truth is far more revealing. Yes, from the 4th era, 174 to 176, the Forsworn did in fact rule over the Reach as an independent kingdom of Skyrim. Yes, this was accomplished while the Empire was beset by Aldmeri Dominion forces and could not send the Legion to reestablish order. And yes, Ulfric Stormcloak did quell the rebellion without Imperial assistance. That much is true. But what the bards often fail to tell in their stories is that the Forsworn kingdom was quite peaceful for those 2 years they were in power. So thoughts on this so far, Lotus?
It, again, this all seems like, well, okay, it all seems plausible, but written from a propaganda standpoint.
Right. Yeah. Somebody clearly is trying to make a very specific point here. And just because a group that self-ruled itself was peaceful for 2 years, I mean, that could be, you can define peaceful lots of different ways.
100%. And that also doesn't necessarily, like, this slant also doesn't mean that this is false information either.
Right. That's true. It could be both. In fact, and here's the other thing is that peaceful could be peaceful through freedom, but also it could be peaceful through domination and fear, right?
Correct. Like everybody's terrified to do anything. So yeah, okay, well, we don't have wide scale conflict because everybody's oppressed.
Right. So both of those are technically peaceful. So here it goes on. True, some crimes were committed against the former Nord landowners. Oh, that doesn't sound so peaceful, does it? No. Often those accused of being the harshest towards their native workers, but on the whole, the Forsworn ruled their lands fairly and were making overtures to be recognized by the Empire as a legitimate kingdom. In the wake of the aftermath of the Great War, you can imagine the backlog on stately matters the Empire had. Before a peace treaty could be resolved with the Forsworn, a militia led by Ulfric Stormcloak sieged the gates of the capital, Markarth. What happened during that battle was war, but what happened after the battle was over is nothing short of war crimes. This is where it gets even spicier. Every official who worked for the Forsworn was put to the sword, even after they had surrendered. Native women were tortured to give up names of Forsworn fighters who had fled the city and were in the hills of the Reach. Anyone who lived in the city, Forsworn and Nord alike, were executed if they had not fought with Ulfric and his men when they breached the gates. Let me say that again. Anyone who lived in the city, Forsworn and Nord alike, were executed if they had not fought with Ulfric and his men when they breached the gates. This means not only were Ulfric's enemies killed, but also just other Nords who had nothing to do with the entire conflict at all because they didn't help.
Right. Basically, if you're not with us, you're against us type of thing.
Yeah. So, and that's what it says here. You are with us or you are against Skyrim was the message on Ulfric's lips as he ordered the deaths of shopkeepers, farmers, and elderly, and any child old enough to lift a sword that had failed in the call to fight with him. So when a grateful empire, that grateful is in quotes, accepted Ulfric's victory and sent soldiers to reestablish the rule of law in the Reach, it was no surprise that he would demand to be allowed to worship Talos freely before the Legion could enter. Those with chaos running through the streets of Markarth and the reports of deaths rising every day, the Empire had no choice but to grant Ulfric and his men their worship. We allowed them to worship Talos in full violation of the White Gold Concordat with the Aldmeri Dominion, which we just talked about. That was one of the things because they didn't believe Talos to be a god, which recognizes the elven belief that Talos as a human cannot be one of the divines. In jeopardizing the treaty that so many sacrificed for during the Great War, the Empire was wrong. But what choice did they have, I ask you, against the Bear of Markarth, Ulfric Stormcloak? No is not an answer. So this whole document is justifying why they broke the White Gold Concordat. Words are hard. Is because Ulfric was so violent and willing to kill his own people in order to get what he wanted, and they would rather break that than
be murdered.
Or just see other people being deathed. I told you I'm lacking sleep, being murdered and tortured and all of that stuff. So yeah, what do you think, Lotus? Pretty dark.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty atrocious in general. But again, it's one of these situations where when you hear a lot of them talk and stuff like that, it doesn't seem completely out of the realm of possibility that this could be a thing. Now, again, we do have the political slant here, as you usually do when things are written from in-universe. So they could be trying to make a point for some reason, but at the same time, oftentimes these situations might even be based on something and perhaps embellished. But I mean, you have a wartime scenario where you just sieged a city. It doesn't seem out of the realm of possibility for things to escalate like this, especially if you're all amped up on this.
Right. It also seems like there's a certain amount of truth, or this feels a certain amount true, because if they were going to break the Concordat, then there must have been a dire reason to do so.
Right. And since we do know that that happened, it doesn't seem like people would just casually be like, meh, whatever, we'll just break the Concordat.
Yeah, no, it seemed like they must have been in a rock and a hard place.
That.
Yeah,
correct.
It must have been a really hard decision, and they must have been, I mean, what could be more threatening to them than their very lives, really?
Right. So that again, it's one of these situations, regardless of the scenario that it's written in, it could very well have at least mostly a truth to it in this situation, just from the results that came about of it.
Right. And again, this is at the top of the iceberg still, because if you play through, if you've done the, the Civil War quest line, then a lot of this stuff gets revealed in conversation, depending on what side you take and all of that.
And the way people act in game, kind of aligns with a lot of this. So it's not totally like, oh man, this is a stretch. It's like, oh cool, war atrocities happened during a war. Who would have thunk it?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So next on the list is simply titled Fallout, which you might be going, why is that on the list? Well,
because it's a very big hit show.
Because it's been on TV. And by the way, go check out the Fallout Lorecast, where I broke down every episode of the series. But in Elder Scrolls lore, why would Fallout be on the iceberg? Well, this has to do with the Nirnroot that
we've talked about this one before, so this will be a quick one.
Yeah, go ahead, Lotus.
Yeah, so Nirnroot's on the Pridwind.
Right. The Pridwin in Fallout is the big airship for the Brotherhood of Steel. And they are growing plants, and they use the same exact model of the Nirnroot in Fallout 4. And they just changed the color a little bit. And so this led to, I don't know how many times I've seen this show up on places like Reddit or wherever, where somebody's like, hey, I just noticed it's the same plant. Do you think Fallout and Elder Scrolls are in the same universe?
Yes. And that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Like, whatever. But like... And honestly, there aren't seem to be any more mentioned here, but like it would not surprise me if there's more assets that are kind of like
pulled from one to the other. Yeah, skeletons are another one of them. There's very minor changes made to skeletons. And it makes sense. You're developing a game using the same engine, using a lot of the same technology. Why not pull objects like skeletons? How different does a skeleton have to look between two different games where you have human bodies?
Right. And this is one of these situations where I was joking earlier that, I guess it's because of us olds, but these used to be referred to as just Easter eggs in games, where it's just like, oh, look, it's the same developer. They put a reference to another thing they do. But now kind of the thing is everybody likes to have like this combined universe, or how is there a connection for real in lore? And it's like, that's totally fine if that's your thing and you want to make that connection. And a lot of times there are those connections, but I don't think this one's actually there.
Right. And if they had intended it, there would be way more connections than just a model of a plant. You would have references in Fallout to, there's all sorts of weird references in Fallout to like ancient gods and weird stuff. And like you would have something show up that looks like somebody was worshiping a dragon, or Molag Bal's face is painted on some ancient temple somewhere. There would be other things, and there just isn't. That doesn't exist in any of the Fallout games. So there you go. All right, one more. Let's knock this next one out. The Psijic Order. Now, we've done an episode about the Psijic Order, so this is going to be another brief one. But the Psijic Order are super interesting. One of the oldest groups of mages in Elder Scrolls at all, and very, very powerful.
Yes, and we knew very, very little about until the more recent games.
Right. So Skyrim has a big connection to the Psijic Order in the Mage's quest line, and the College of Winterhold quest line specifically. And then we have a whole bunch of stuff that was added in ESO over the years.
Yes. Elder Scrolls Online fills out kind of more of their history, because we encounter, in case you don't know, Skyrim takes place notably far after. Two eras of the world after the Elder Scrolls Online. Elder Scrolls Online is a prequel. So the amount of context added to the Psijic Order in the Elder Scrolls Online really is kind of just giving you more of some of the formations of it and what they have as like a basis to the world. Whereas Skyrim, you got introduced to them and it's like, whoa, what is this? Why do these guys just casually pop up with portals everywhere and
Right.
can freeze time and things like that?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, these are spells and magic that exist in the world, but it's less like it's so casual for them and the experience you have with them. And it's just kind of neat.
Yeah, so the very brief description here is a secretive and long-running organization of mystics who live on the dimension traveling island Artaeum. They've been seen interfering in world events such as the Interregnum and the Eye of Magnus incident. The Interregnum being the time period of Elder Scrolls Online, and the Eye of Magnus being the whole plot line with the College of Winterhold in Skyrim.
Right.
So there you go. So yeah, they show up and they have time powers. And they're very mysterious.
Amongst other, many other skills. They're really just like a whole group of like grand mages type of deal.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Hey, we've still got some time, so let's knock out. I think we probably get two more of these.
Well, a few of these actually, since we were able to cover quick, as we've already done them before, we haven't needed to spend as much time.
Right. So the next one is Elder Scrolls Prophecies, said to exist outside of time and space. The Elder Scrolls, we're talking the Elder Scrolls themselves, the objects in the games, which the games are named after, are artifacts that record prophecies and major events on Nirn, containing information about the past, present, and future, as well as alternate realities. We've talked about the Elder Scrolls before. We have an episode about that. But Lotus, what other things would you just make sure people know about them?
So the thing with the actual Elder Scrolls, without getting like too deep into it, which is kind of interesting, is the Elder Scrolls themselves, I mean, became a sort of like a plot device to, hey, we need a cool name to Arena because the product itself changed.
So Arena wasn't really the best idea, but yeah.
Yeah, so like they had to change things up and they needed something to give it more of a like D&D vibe. Literally was like kind of what they were going for at the start. We need something that sounds like a magic MacGuffin that we're all fighting over. But then as they were brought into the series, it's kind of neat. One of my favorite features to them is that they are really, you could argue that they're not really there in the standard corporeal sense.
Yeah.
Because when the ones are, one of my favorite snippets is when they're in the Imperial Library, they can't actually accurately keep track of the number of them because it changes as things fulfill and as there's so many threads. We're not getting into Dragon Breaks, but as there are so many threads of time, this is one of the prophecies that could be, and it shows you like all these different possibilities. But as one possibility disappears or goes to another, another thread, it might no longer be relevant and it might change. So it's just kind of like these magic objects are here and they have essentially like all this information, but they also are constantly changing. So you can't really even keep track of them that well. It's just a cool thing where it's just like, man, these things are
physically
so
like not just the information
weird
on them, but they physically will just disappear out of existence or reappear out of existence, or people will misremember the number that was there as if their mind was actually changed as well. Like there's weird, it's almost like they have, like the Elder Scrolls is a multiverse, and not in the sense of like Marvel, in the sense of like...
So you're saying it is part of Fallout.
It's no, but in the sense of almost like what people are trying to figure out with quantum mechanics in our own universe. One of the explanations for quantum mechanics is that the reason why it seems like there's only probabilities when we look at the way, say, electrons work, it isn't because they actually work with probabilities. It's because there's 100% chance something will happen. But every time anything happens, reality breaks into multiple other versions of itself. So if there's only a 30% chance in our reality that it happens, then somewhere else it totals 70% chance that it will happen as well. And so reality is constantly splintering and fragmenting like the branches of a tree. And this kind of is similar to what they're doing with Elder Scrolls in reference to the actual Elder Scrolls themselves, because as decisions are made, as time changes, as the prisoner makes actual changes to the way the world plays out and history unfolds, then it's as if time might be going down some alternate path, and then the scrolls then match that, and it's so weird.
Right. It's super weird.
Yeah, but very cool. It's very cool that we have.
I think these ones are neat.
This kind of lore that kind of matches what might actually be happening in our own reality according to quantum mechanics. Like that's nuts. But yeah, and on top of that, you can't just read an Elder Scroll. It's not like you get your hands on one, open it up, and be like, now I know the mysteries of the universe.
It's all these it's not even like Daedric text. A lot of it is literally symbols of what looks to us like gibberish, and supposedly that's what the training allows you to decipher is these other languages, these symbols and stuff like that. But as a side effect, it causes, the crazies and blindness.
Yeah. The moth priests who study this for decades and then eventually learn how to interpret and then also go blind. And so it's all super weird. So there you go. That's what the Elder Scrolls are. And of course we have an episode. So go, if you want to head back and listen to that one, go into more detail there. We've got one more. Let's cover one more, Lotus.
Yeah.
This one is pretty simple. If you've played Oblivion or the Oblivion Remaster and you've done the Thieves Guild quests, then you will know about the Gray Fox.
Mm-hmm.
So the magical persona of a master thief granted to the wearer of the gray cowl of Nocturnal. Now, like so many things in Elder Scrolls, you have the Daedric princes, but then you have objects and items and weapons and things that the Daedric princes are associated with or made themselves or whatever. And Nocturnal has an item called the Gray Cowl. And the big reveal in the Thieves Guild quest line is that whoever puts on the Gray Cowl, nobody remembers who they are anymore. They think they're the same gray fox that there's always been. They can't tell the difference between them. And that allows them to be better thieves because as soon as they take the cowl off, they disappear. Nobody knows who they were.
Right. Which I think is a really cool concept and also really funny from like just a mechanics perspective of just like, you're running down the street with guards chasing you, like, whoop, and you just like take off your hat essentially. And you're like, well, I don't know where he went.
I don't know where he is.
But you're like, still
who are you looking for?
Holding...
We're looking for the Gray Cowl or the Gray Fox, which is funny because I'm doing a impression of, what's his face who does the voice of the Gray Fox?
Wes Johnson.
Wes Johnson.
Oh,
because he's also a guard, right? So like if the guard was chasing you, it'd be Wes Johnson asking about the Gray Fox, who's also Wes Johnson.
Yeah,
that's great.
Look, he does a lot. He's about as integral to the series as it gets at this point.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so that's the Gray Fox. We're only about 8 in, and we'll pick up on this next week and continue this. One of the things that I did recently is I posted on our Discord, which if you're not a part of, join us on the Discord, Robots Radio Discord. There's a link in the description. But I posted in the Elder Scrolls Lorecast section, and I was like, hey, we're shifting from talking about Skyrim powers and that kind of stuff to something else. What are some things that you guys would like us to cover? And one of the things that came up was the novels, because they come up every so often because they do reveal things that the games don't talk about. They do expand the lore in interesting ways, and they're interesting books. So Lotus and I were debating actually jumping into that this week. And as I went down the research hole of like reminding, it's been over 10 years. It's been over a decade since I've read them. I quickly realized that there's a lot I don't remember.
Yeah, it's definitely been a few years for me. I remember a decent amount of it. I know you wanted to freshen up on it before we dive into that, so I actually will probably do that again.
Well, I want to make sure that we cover it as accurately as possible, and I'm not misremembering things or saying Akatosh when I'm supposed to be saying another A name.
In details. But yeah, so I actually, the other thing that I really enjoyed, because I've read them, and also I have the audio versions of them.
Yeah, which are great.
And they're actually very good. Some of the pronunciation here or there is a little funky, but I mean, whatever. But I actually find if you're not a big reader, because I'm honestly not somebody who likes to, I don't find enjoyment in sitting down and reading. It's just not really something I like to do very much. But you do have interest in them. The audio versions are really cool.
Yes.
I think they're very well done, and they're really good, and they're not exceedingly long. And I don't know. I've mentioned before that I don't think they're going to get anybody into the Elder Scrolls as a series, but they are a great addition if you already like the series.
Yeah, and there's lots of weird stuff. The floating island, the way Daedra are born again on the floating island, even just the insight into their culture and the way that worked. Until we got
probably
some
the
of
most
the
bizarre part is they go in and they give you a taste of how they live other than just your interactions with them in the games and stuff like that.
Right. Which was the first time before, it had been, that was the first time we actually had any real glimpse of that outside of just little references here and there until they dug into that more with some of the Elder Scrolls Online expansions.
Yes, without a doubt.
So, so it's interesting because the Daedra are interesting. They're not, they're dark and mean and, they come from realms of oblivion where they are, having to be subservient to other dark and terrible lords, but they're also people, and that is a weird balance. And
yes, they definitely give them a humanization in the books.
Mm-hmm.
And you also get some very interesting aspects to Argonians.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
and
Argonian fans. Well, actually, I will say Argonian fans both have stuff they like and also some stuff that I know people don't care for because they have some interesting hive mind activity that I've talked to people about that kind of freaks them out.
Yeah.
Because the hist is creepy.
Yeah, it gets all weird. But anyway, we can't go into it all right now. But we're going to hold on to that. I'm going to make sure that I get through it all again.
Topic for another
day.
We're
as clear and fresh on it as we can be before we cover this. So it might be some time because we're going to be doing the Iceberg for a while. But who knows? Maybe when we wrap up the Iceberg, we move on to the books. So just wanted to put that out there as a fun thing. But tell you what, we're going to take a quick break. We got to go thank our patrons. And of course, we've got the random UESP page. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast, dear child of cities. That is why the Night Mother loves you.
Speaking of, we can't avoid that voice. Thank you to everybody who signs up on the Patreon and supports the show. We really do appreciate it. Patreon.com/Elder Scrolls Lorecast for ad-free episodes, and you can get t-shirts and stickers. You can join us for patron chats and all of that stuff. And I, like a good showrunner, did not load these up ahead of time, but I'm loading it up right now.
Half the fun is we have absolutely no idea what we're walking into with these.
With the who signed up on the Patreon.
Oh no, I thought you were jumping ahead
page?
to. Oh, I thought you were talking about the page. I was like, well, that at least makes sense. Not knowing who the patrons is it's a choice. Although they're not on my screen either. So
yeah. So here we go. We had two new patrons sign up in the last week. Matthew D and Butcher. That's a good name. Thank you for joining us. So glad that you're here. And let's see. We have to shout out all of our, here they are, Daedric princes who are currently signed up and active. What? We've got so many.
I was going to say, I truly thanks all of you. There is a lot of you. Every time I'm mesmerized by how many of you enjoy the show. So I'm really glad that so many of you enjoy it. And, you don't have to financially support it by any means, obviously. We like the fact that people like it. But the fact that so many of you choose to also support us financially is super nice of you.
Yeah, it's huge thanks.
Yeah.
We couldn't do the show if it wasn't for you guys.
To keep dedicating as much time to these as we do.
Yeah. And so shout outs to our Daedric princes who get shout outs every week. Kira C, Blinding Vision, Hircine, Peter R, Austin B, and Mintaka. Thank you so much for your support. And speaking of numbers, 129 paying subscription patrons.
Moly.
And that doesn't even include the free ones. So you could join up for free and just make sure that if we're going to say take a week off or something like that, you'll be aware ahead of time. Or if we do giveaves, sometimes we've done giveaways in the past on the Patreon. So go check it out.
I think we're getting a new stock of stuff to give away very soon.
Oh, new things.
If I'm not mistaken.
Nice. So look forward to that. But Lotus, why don't you tell them what's going on with Tales of Tamriel while I get the random page ready?
So we've had a little while in between episodes because Ark was away. We're currently planning. Obviously, some stuff has happened in the Elder Scrolls Online. We're still waiting for the new season to kind of kick off before we have much to discuss with that. PTS is going on and all that stuff right now. But the new event that's actually new, as in it's a totally new event, the Hearts Day. celebration is now in Elder Scrolls Online. We'll go into that. I think it's pretty well done. I went through and did it. So we'll have some tales and fun stuff like that very soon, as well as I've been hinting at it the last couple of times. We're trying to iron out a time right now. TES benefactor from the Imperial Library will be joining so that we can discuss that original D&D game format that the Elder Scrolls was crafted off of.
So you and I have speculated about that for a long time, so it'll be really cool to hear more.
I know, and it's like we've got all the data, and really it was Benefactor who brought it to my attention before it was released publicly to the internet and everything like that. So I feel he would be the best to have really explained the ins and outs of it. Plus, I'd argue that Benefactor is probably one of the most knowledgeable people in the community as well. So
yeah. So
that's
exciting.
Stay tuned. Those will be soon enough. You'll be getting some fresh new episodes of Tales on the Horizon.
Nice. And if you want any of my stuff or other stuff on the network, robotsradio.net, lots of different shows. I do the Fallout Lorecast, the Lord of the Rings Lorecast, and Retro Recall. And this last week, we talked about Battletoads. Did you ever play Battletoads on the NES?
I do, and that's got that sweet pause screen music.
The music's good. That game is so hard. It is so
it's
hard.
Real brutal.
Yeah,
I'm not sure I ever got past the bike section as a kid.
Right? Yes. I had a hard time.
That's where we stalled out.
I played it again and I still have. It's not any easier as you get older. But yeah, the title of the Retro Recall episode is Battletoads still as why is this game so hard as we remember? So there you go. Check out if you're into retro games and the nostalgia about it and some all fun info and stuff and people who haven't played them in 30 some years trying to play them again for the first time in forever, then go check out Retro Recall. But here we go. We got the random page. This one's a short one. And speaking of Elder Scrolls Online and Argonians, this is Claws in Gloves. I love Argonian names. Claws in Gloves is an Argonian outlaw and patron of the Flaming Nyx in the city of Mournhold. He is located on the lower level of the Corner Club. So there you go. There's not not much about him. He's just a dude that hangs out. He's a male Argonian. 39,000
claws in his gloves, apparently.
Claws in gloves. He wears gloves.
Do you think it'd be funny if he didn't have gloves? Like, how did he get that name, but he doesn't have gloves?
He just doesn't have gloves. Yeah.
He just doesn't.
It's like I left him at home. But
he got that name because I yearn to one day have gloves.
There you go. He does have some dialogue. He assures you he's on his best behavior by saying, "Fear not, I intend no mayhem." Okay.
All right, sure.
Thanks, Claws and Gloves. There you go. Go visit the UESP and hit the random page and see what you get. We should have a fun competition sometime about like what is the weirdest page you got on. It'd be hard to legitimately trust people because somebody could be like, oh, they just find the weirdest page and say they got it. But
right. We've come up with some weird games before, though.
That's true. Well, thanks for tuning in, chat. Thank you for being here as well. We're going to keep going down the iceberg as we move into future episodes. And sorry about my lack of sleep addled brain. Maybe that's the best way to say it.
Sure, we'll go with that.
Yeah, but we'll be back next week. And at the end of the month, we'll have our patron chat. That'll be up in just 2 weeks from now. So that's coming up real soon. So come join us for that. And we'll see you next time. Am I forgetting anything, Lotus? Is that it?
I don't think so. Just stay out of the iceberg water because it's very cold.
Yeah, it's cold out. Don't go in the iceberg water. Yeah. All right. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.
See you later.
Thanks for tuning in to the Elder Scrolls Lorecast. Check out robotsradio.net for more podcasts just like this, and join us on the Robots Radio Discord. Be part of a community of over 5,000 people who are excited about video games and so much more. Robots Radio. Games, lore, stories, community. Just press play.
IPVanish protects every device you own. Your phone, your laptop, your smart TV. If it connects to the internet, it should be protected. IPVanish encrypts your connection and masks your IP address, helping keep your browsing private at home and on public Wi-Fi. And with no device limits, one account covers everything. Stream with added privacy. Browse securely. Connect with confidence. Right now, save 83% off the 2-year plan. Get started today at ipvanish.com/audio and take control of your privacy with IPVanish.